There is no other destination like this in the V8 Supercar Series. 40 kilometres south of Auckland, Pukekohe Park Raceway, the only international stop on the championship calendar. And speaking of the championship, it is crunch time in the title race. Coming up today on your home of motorsport, the shootout and race 1. 100 kilometre event, that's 36 laps around here. 27 laps is 75% of the race distance. We'll only have one compulsory pit stop, and that is for tyres. The pit window is open between laps 2 and 25. We now go back to qualifying time, so we'll take you through the starting grid, and the top 10 will be how they qualified. Greg Murphy, 56.54, so he gets pole position. It sets up a good battle at the front of the grid. Murphy versus Scaife. Jason Bright in position 3. You go down to Craig Lowndes in 5. Then Ambrose will start from 6th. Garth Tander in 7th. Bargwanna will start from 8th. Radicic and Todd Kelly round out our top 10.
And this wet weather is very likely to scramble this grid. Canto, Seaton, Bow and Jones. Many people making adjustments on the line at the moment. Ingle, Wheel, Baird and Ellery as they set their cars for what's going to be a wet race, we think, for the duration. Wills, Morris, Dumbrell and Larkham out at 24. McConville, Kelly, David Bernard, Jamie Whincup in 28. And the final 3 cars, Noski, Thexton and Anthony Tratt, who had problems yesterday and will start off the back in the toll racing car. Darryl.
What a sight. And away we go. Looks as though Scaife's got himself dug down again, but he shoots across. Max Wilson's all over him like a rash. Murphy's missed it completely. Scaife dug himself out and down to turn 1 as the water goes spraying everywhere. It's Mark Scaife and Max Wilson. A great start from the Brazilian. Contact already at turn 1. Both of them round in a spin and Scaife into the wall. Oh! It was a disaster waiting to happen, and further back, you got David Bernard, Anthony Tratt, and Cameron McConville deep into the Armco. A big incident to start this race. Big wheel spin from Mark Scaife, but then we get down to this turn here, turns 2 and 3, the S's. These guys pirouette. Look what happens when you go off at Pukekohe. You go off big time. Good job by the tyre wall there. And then Wilson's a spectator as the rest of the field goes through. Now, meanwhile, at the back of the field, you won't see it here. You'll see what's happening between 18 and 1. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, there's a 3-car pile up in the wall back at turn 1.
The whole world opens up for Murph. Another replay again with Max on the inside, and tough one to call. But one way or another, contact in the second corner on this race from any department is not a good idea. It would have been a much smarter thing to try and get through there without a fight to the death at the second corner.
Maybe we might be able to find it here. A little bit further back. These guys are right at the tail of the field. And here we go now. Keep your eyes on the yellow car. That's Cameron McConville, car 3. So there's also contact with one of the Orcon Fords in there. Ooh. 4 went in, only 1 came out.
The Audi safety car will peel into the pit lane here, and remember, the cars are going to be line astern at the start-finish line. No passing before the control line.
Craig Lowndes thought twice about that and then realised that the control line is actually just
way down
underneath that bridge. They'll go across it about now. So we got ourselves a restart. Didn't even get 1 flying lap in. Just look how dark and grey and miserable it is outside. Imagine what it's like in the cockpit.
And you'll find that Lowndes will be pretty handy in these conditions, and already he hustles up the inside of Bright and takes the lead of the race. He's very forceful in these conditions, and Richards is going with him. It looks like Jason's struggling to get the nose of the car where he wants it to be. And the visibility beyond these guys down the back straight will be absolutely shocking. Look at that plume. Staggering.
So Craig Lowndes, Jason Bright and Stephen Richards shoot away at the restart. Bradley Jones is trying to hold on. A look out the rear of the Cat Ford of Lowndes. And this is where we look for the mudlarks. It's a real pity that Jason Richards didn't make it to the starting line, because we know his form in the wet. Then you factor into it, of course, the Kiwi equation. It would have been a good bet, but unfortunately Team Dynamic only have 1 car in Simon Wills competing this weekend after that big rollover from Richo. He's okay. The car is a completely different story. Somewhere in there is a car. There it is. That's Marcus Ambrose and Greg Murphy involved in a good scrap. That'll be for our effective race lead.
And these guys are in 5th and 6th at the moment on the road. Greg.
Just with Cameron McConville, you were another party that was sort of tied up in all that. How did it look from your perspective and what happened?
Well, it looked pretty messy from where I was sitting. You could hardly see anything, but as I went into turn 1, I saw David Bernard sort of sliding across the road. So I went to go to the right-hand side, but I was sort of sandwiched between the wall. And then I think I ran into the back of Larko, who was, again, trying to avoid Bernard. And then I got hit by Trat from behind, which pushed us into the wall. So it was just messy turn 1, you know, when you start back in the pack. And I think Dave, I don't know what he was doing, must have had half a lose, and we all reacted to try and avoid him.
Quickly, can it be repaired for tomorrow?
Oh, I'd say more than likely, yeah. It was a fairly big hit, but hopefully.
Thanks, Cam.
Thanks, mate.
Yes, it looked like Bernard just got crossed up into turn 1, and I don't think, I've only seen it once, and you sometimes need to study carefully, but it didn't look like there were any other cars around him. But then all of that other action was subsequent to that. So Lowndes, Stephen Richards to 2nd. We saw that move when we were talking to Cam. Jason Bright 3rd, Brad Jones 4th, Ambrose and Murphy 5th and 6th. But remember that Ambrose and Murphy have done their stop. And the way that they've got in and out and integrated again into the field means that they're going to be pretty handily placed. And these guys that are currently leading on the road are going to be buried back in the field when they take their stop.
Greg Murphy is right up behind Marcus Ambrose.
Brad Jones is struggling to see out of the Aussie male car 21, so he's really battling out there at the moment, trying to figure out which way this place goes with zero visibility. Greg.
Pit stop for Team Kiwi here, and they're washing the front windshield as well. I don't know whether Craig Baird is having some difficulty seeing out of that front windshield, but they've thrown a heap of suds at that front window, Neil.
Mark Noske in the dirt, Greg. And deep in the dirt as well. Just have to check where he is on the track.
Lowndes has got great speed in the wet, 1:05.2, 1 minute 5.2 his lap time. Next closest was Stevie Richards at a 6 flat on that last lap. Murphy's still trying to figure out a way around Ambrose. It looks like he's got a little bit of extra car speed. Yellow flag being displayed down there. It's not a full course yellow, it's a local yellow. So Noske's off in the sand trap on the exit of turn 1. So he would have gone in there hard and fast. And when you're off there, you're off a long way, Matthew. So I doubt that there'll be an intervention here. And this is a replay of him going off. He's actually walloped the wall.
Gee, that's big.
That'll give that thing a fair old wheel alignment. Fortunately, it's gone right up into the sand trap and well off the road. Meanwhile, I reckon Murphy is going to get up the inside of Ambrose and does so in the braking area. That's a very important move at this point, lap 9 of 36. That was a big hit.
And that car was lucky to stay on the ground in the end because it went nose first on the left-hand side of the track.
And there were actually people behind that barrier that scattered a bit down there then, so that was a bit of a moment. Here's the move again. It started going onto the back straight with Ambrose not getting traction to the road. Wheel spin, he starts to move over a little bit. Murphy's got track position and away he goes. The Murphy car putting its power down well in these very ordinary conditions.
It's about as ordinary as it gets from that view. So Greg Murphy, there's 3 cars on the road in front of him in Lowndes, Richards and Bright. They're yet to complete their compulsory pit stop.
And he's only about 9 seconds behind the leaders. And there's about a 48-second time loss, a 49-second time loss here. That's relative to a normal dry track profile. It'll be worse in the wet time profile, that is. And that is by the time you depart, do your stop and get going. Remember, the compulsory pit stops only for rubber. And compulsory pit stops will be a feature of the 2nd and 3rd races as well.
Jason Bargwanna there in 7th position after putting down his best qualifying effort of the season. He qualified 8th, and he was the first man caught in that mess of a shootout that, like I said, was effectively null and void at the end of it.
Scaife's reporting a tyre rubbing, and he's actually going to come in and have that dealt with. He's down in 19th at last glance, and the fastest man on the track is Greg Murphy with a 1:4.3. Next quickest is Lowndes at a 4.6. He and Stevie Richards are trading similar pace, and you can see how close they are on the road. Jason Bright's got big visibility issues at the moment. There's something going on with the wiper on that car. And there's Murph.
There's nothing going on with the wiper of that car. Now Garth Tander on the inside of Ambrose. the second man to take on Ambrose and win at the Holden hairpin. Just saw Jason Bright's car go through when you were mentioning that.
Just keep cool.
Nothing's moving on the windscreen.
It's 12 laps into the race.
And Marcus's engineer just reassuring him, remember that the point scenario, the way the championship is working this year, favours just staying out, being solid. And Greg Murphy said many times over the weekend in various interviews that he couldn't have believed that he'd be in the position he's in if you'd asked him in the mid-year, where he felt like he just wasn't getting the results that he thought. But lots and lots of those 5th and 4th and 8th and 10th in this field at the moment accumulate sufficient points without the leaders getting away that you're in good shape. Remember that Ambrose is the leader in the corrected and uncorrected championship point scenario.
It's Barguana, Marcus. He is for position.
And he just needs to stay out, not get tangled up in trouble. There's Bargs, the shark in the murk, and he sneaks up the inside and all the garbage. It's so difficult to see in the best of circumstances out of these cars because of the limited peripheral vision with your helmet, the roll cage, the rear wing.
Marcus will be Todd Kelly. He is also positioned.
So they're lining up and taking pot shots at Marcus Ambrose, and he's letting him go through. You won't see him go nutso over moves like that this weekend. I spoke to him in that championship picture, Neil, and we talked about the cautious approach for this season. Gee, it's a hard one to balance for these guys, because he said at the end of the day, I'm a racer and I am here to win, but he's also here to win Ford's first championship since 1997.
There's an element of caution for sure. There has to be at this point in the championship, but he's struggling as well. If he had a car that was quick enough, he'd want to be leading this race. That's the way to do it. And the reason he's not is that it isn't coming off those hairpins with anything like the traction that he needs in these conditions. Richards is getting closer to Lowndes, and Tander's in that mix as well.
Good restart from Craig Lowndes, good pace too.
Fastest man on the last lap was Stephen Richards at 1 minute 4.1. He's got the lights ablaze. There's Garth. See what we end up with this time. 4.3 for Lowndes, 4.1 for Richards, 4.6 for Bright.
And here's Lowndesy leading the race, yet to pit.
He wasn't happy about something. He was just shaking the head there. It didn't look like he was enjoying the moment. He's just rounded somebody up. Okay, it was David Thexton.
Yeah, David Thexton he sort of rejoined him halfway through that last lap. Kind of got ripped off a bit there because I was looking forward to Lowndes' approach to the main straight. So Mark Scaife has the best time, 1:03.147. Remember, he was involved in an incident at turn 1 with Max Wilson. Right down the list now, Scaife.
Barguana and Tander are having a battle, and it looked like they were really on for a duel there going into the braking area, but Whincup split them now, just opened up that gap a little bit. Greg.
And just before we get to Rusty, we might just check out Greg Murphy sliding past Jason Bright.
That was quite a bit earlier.
Rusty?
Matty, just listening to your chat there before, and obviously how this race may pan out for the guys up in front and their decision to run the gauntlet with the safety car. It takes on average at 40 kilometres an hour 36 seconds to trundle through pit lane here, and that doesn't allow the time for your actual pit stop, your compulsory stop to change tyres. So if you worked on an average of say 8 seconds to do that, they're going to lose 44 seconds or thereabouts.
There's an umpire standing down at that turn, and he's got his arms wide for Stephen Richards, who put the move on Craig Lowndes but ended up on the wrong side of the circuit. So Lowndes maintains his lead. Richards had a crack, got him, but couldn't hold on to it.
Classic crisscross, and Stephen had a pile of pace. Craig came back into his grasp a little bit because of the traffic on the previous lap, and he was well positioned at the end of the back straight. Looked like he got away with it, but then he just overshot, and well, look, all over again now. So Stephen's got to go back to the drawing board, and here he is. And he's just beating away at it, and they have a lead over Greg Murphy of only 10 seconds. So adding to that point that Greg was making before, they're going to be buried in the field unless things change in the complexion of this race after they take their compulsory pit stop. And the compulsory pit stop windows for this race between laps 2 and 25, so the window will close very shortly. We're working lap 21 of 36.
Always good to have a listen, so we might do so as Larry Perkins looks on. Have a listen to Stephen Richards at work.
It's all about delicacy in the wet, the oversteer, and if you listen to and watch our in-car pictures throughout the course of this championship, you'll notice that that's a very different rhythm and sound to normal, and that's because it's all tippy-toe. Gently use the throttle, gently squeeze the brake pedal, slow, gentle inputs to the steering wheel. You've got to caress the cars around in the wet. You cannot afford to use the same kind of aggression that you use in the dry conditions. There's Murph, third at the moment, but effectively the race leader after the top two will take their compulsory stop, and that's coming very shortly. It's throttle control in particular that makes the difference in these conditions, and you need a car that's got sympathy to these conditions, one that sits down on its rear and gives you drive and confidence to use more throttle percentage on the exit. And the cars that lay back and bite into that road and bury into the road just feel terrific. Lots of fun to drive in these conditions, but a car that doesn't have any compliance in the rear, that sits up and is stiff and slippery to drive, is a real handful. You can't touch the throttle even as you get into the higher gears. Sometimes fourth and fifth, they're still making wheel spin, and you're frustrated. You'll readjust the bars, you whinge on the radio, which doesn't make anybody any happier about the situation back in the pit lane, but you need to grizzle to somebody.
Good fight here, four-car fight.
Can you turn the lights and the trans pumps off, mate? Lights and trans pumps off, please, mate.
Message for Jason. And there they go, lights off, and the oil cooler's off in that car. Here's Todd, making a bit of pace now on Bargwanna. Hard in this situation when he's the fourth guy in a queue, a lot of spray, and it's not all nice and grey like it looks here. It's all brown and murky on the windscreen.
Yeah, mate, but just be careful with him. You got a few laps, just pick your time, pal.
David Thexton moves aside. Jeff Grech talking to Todd Kelly. Be careful, pick your time. Lap 24 of 36. This scrap's been going for quite a few laps. In the meantime, Mark Scaife, who's 12th position on the road, has just gone a 1:02.89 to be the fastest man again.
Kelly was complaining that Bargwanna was using too much of the road. But one of the things that also happens in these races, if you get too aggressive with the throttle too early and you make a lot of wheel spin in a place like this, you take the little sharp square edge off the block on the wet weather tyre, and it just gets a bit harder towards the back end of the race to make the same sort of decent exit you may have made earlier in the race. So you've got to think in terms of tyre preservation a bit in these conditions as well.
Another look by Kelly. Down to the Holden hairpin. Not a lot in these guys at all.
They'll have adjusted brake bias to the rear for these conditions, because if they do lock a front brake, the cars will not change direction. So they'll have snuck, depending on the way they've got the calibration arranged in the brake bias, they'll have taken them to the rear. Gregory.
Craig Lowndes is in for his stop, Neil. Fresh tyres going on. I've heard John Panozzo on the radio from Team Brock as well. Expect Jason Bright in the next time around.
Keep our eyes on Lowndes, see where he rejoins.
Craig, we're going to be a fair way down the queue, mate. We're just going to have to pick them off one by one.
So a bit of a frustration there for the Ford Performance Racing guys, because Lowndes does have genuine pace in these wet conditions, but strategically they needed to come in when everybody else did at the head of that queue early on. So he may make some ground back up here. He's going to slot back in with car 66. And that's down around 19th. I think that was Dean Canto that just went past him. So he's 19th or 20th or thereabouts.
Yeah, he'll be about 18th at the moment. Stephen Ellery, 1:02.76. Fastest lap. He's
going to lose a spot here because he's on cold tyres, and Max has got a run on him here. And I think Craig Baird will go with him. So that was a lot of work down the drain, really. They were probably hoping that there may have been another safety car intervention or something else that reshuffled the order in that race.
Now Stephen Richards will come in as well as Craig Lowndes regains that position off Craig Baird. Darryl?
Yeah, pretty good stuff here so far, guys. Everything good. Nice, clean stuff. Good stuff.
Straight on it, out the gate, Richard. You're going to have Max Wilson and Craig Lowndes right beside you.
It's a pretty good battle group to rejoin. Michelle Helix race update is now corrected because all of these guys have done their pit stop. So Greg Murphy is our race leader. Tanda Bargwanna, Todd Kelly, Paul Radicic make up our top 5. Marcus Ambrose 6th. Jamie Whincup just went wide there.
And Stephen Richards actually came out in front of that little battling group. They're right on him. He's on cold tyres, so he'd be sweating.
Lowndes in 19th, and you saw Russell Ingall in 20th position. Car number 9, qualified 17th. Had a tap with Paul Morris, which put him back even further. Let's check on what Mark Skaife's doing. He's up to 8th position now. As I mentioned, it's all corrected. So Skaife, after leading from the word go, and then found himself spun around, is now moving through the field. Oh, talk about spun around. Stephen Richards didn't need that, and neither did Russell Ingall.
Russell's had a tough event. Greg.
Neil, just having a quick look at the tyres that have just come off Jason Bright's car from car 50. You can see that there's a bit of steam coming off them. We've just put the barometer on them, 27 degrees. So they're getting a fair old workout, the wet tyres, even though it's rather damp out there right now.
The softer compound than the dry, obviously, and they warm up amazingly even in these conditions. So this is as a result of Richards having come out on cold tyres from his stop in front of Craig Baird. They made contact. Richo went across the road and he's managed to continue, but then got crossed up here on the exit of 5. And Russell Ingall's bit in the front right-hand corner of the Holden. And I think that Russell's car might have been in worse shape after that one.
Meanwhile, Greg Murphy continues to be our race leader. He's 8 seconds clear of this bunch. Greg Rust in pit lane.
They're working frantically, the Ford Performance Racing team, on David Bernard's car. This is the left rear. They've got the dent puller on it, and the reason they're doing that is it's cut into that left tyre. So they've got a new one on standby as well, but obviously he can't keep out there if it's going to chew the tyre up.
It's on and away now, so he rejoins, but when he came in was 23rd, so he's going to be right at the very back of this field for the second race. Here's our race leader, an 8.2 second lead. And first blood looks like it could go to Murphy here in this critical battle to the end of this championship. And the man that the remaining focus is on is Marcus Ambrose, 6th. Mark Skaife, a great recovery in 8th at the moment. So Murphy, Tanda, Bargwanna, Kelly, Radicic, another good strong day of quiet achievement from him. Ambrose, Rick Kelly, Mark Skaife, Stephen Ellery performing well considering they had a bucket of bolts at the last race meeting when they left it. And Stevie Johnson in 10th in the Shell Helix entry.
Murph yet to be beaten overall here at Pukekohe. He's also the winner of a non-championship event they had here in 1996. In race terms, he made a clean sweep in 96 and 01. Last year he had to split the races with Mark Skaife and his then teammate Todd Kelly.
Last lap for Murphy, a 1 minute 3.3, so he's not pushing that hard at the moment. There are other people out there that are actually running quicker, but for him now, be recognition in his mind, that's a really good, comfortable margin. There's nobody in Mamura's threatening. Here's the fastest race times traded lap by lap. Stephen Ellery and Mark Skaife, well and truly into the 2s, and those guys have just been eclipsed by Jason Bright, who's done a 2 minute 6. 1 minute 2.6. Get it together. 2 minutes 6, I'm an idiot.
Ellery and Skaife are out there throwing down those impressive times together. Skaife is 8th, Ellery is 9th. Bit of distance now between Garth Tanda. Todd Kelly's finally got past Bargwanna, so the order is Murphy, Tanda, Kelly, Bargwanna, and Radicic make up your top 5. Marcus Ambrose 6th, Skaife is 7th. Rick Kelly's got past Ellery, so Rick Kelly is 8th, and Stephen Ellery 9th, and Stephen Johnson is 10th. Greg?
Matthew, over the last 10 laps, the odd messages that have been coming through on the radio from Eric Pender, the engineer on car 51, to Greg Murphy have been look after the rear tyres. They want to make sure that Murph brings it home in P1, and the message has just been to conserve and look after those wet weather rears.
7.6 seconds now, the gap.
Another thing that's unfolding that could be a bit interesting is that Scaife has got past Rick Kelly and moved to 7th. Ambrose is 6th, and there's only 1.5 odd seconds or thereabouts between Scaife and Ambrose. So and there's Ambrose just in the distance. So if he can displace Marcus, it boosts his potential in the championship, and it also helps Murphy. So he'll have the eyes on here. He'll need every place he can get if he's going to keep his slim championship hopes alive, and he'll be pushing hard. Last lap through for Scaife at 1 minute 2.6. For Ambrose at 1 minute 3.1.
He's closing the gap.
He's closing, all right.
There is your Shell Helix race order. Murphy, Tander, Kelly, Bargwanna and Radicic. Then we pick up Ambrose. Jamie Whincup is traffic behind him. There is Mark Scaife. Just saw the face of Scaife sweating. Certainly not hot here, but he has really worked hard.
Huge mental effort in the cars in these conditions, and the cars, even in the coldest conditions, are amazingly hot inside. It's a good 25, sometimes 30 degrees above ambient in the cockpit of the car.
That last one was a quickest lap, 1:02.27 for Scaife.
3 laps to go, mate. 3 laps to go.
So, great pace out of car one. Next on the list is Jamie Whincup, as I mentioned, traffic in terms of race positions. And now he gets a clear shot at Marcus Ambrose. Meanwhile, Garth Tander is holding on to 2nd position. The best he's finished overall this year is 4th. So Garth's heading for a PB.
It's the margin they're giving him to Mark Scaife, plus 1.4 seconds.
Just got chopped a little bit in that last lap, down to 1.2. There's just some sort of Kiwi magic about this place for Greg Murphy.
It's amazing, isn't it?
He's got his family here, of course. He set up a camper van on the infield that he intends to stay at tonight. You can imagine how busy it is for Murph this week. And here is a good battle for 2nd. Todd Kelly, he's had a handful of Jason Bargwanna to get to that position now. Looks as though Garth Tander wants to give him grief as well.
Well, this is going to be a pressure 2.8 Ks here for Tander, and he's on for his best result of the year so far, but Kelly's up on the inside and he's made good ground in the final turn. He's got track position for turn 1, and Garth can't afford to be out there in the shiny stuff, and the HRT number 2 car moves to 2nd position. Murphy, Kelly, Todd, Tander 3rd, Bargwanna 4th, Radicic 5th, Ambrose. Scaife's actually got into the ones now, 1 minute 1.9 on that last lap. He'll be all over the back of Marcus Ambrose.
P2.
This man was 2nd overall here in 2002 as his teammate took it out, Greg Murphy. And now Todd Kelly is holding on to 2nd position, but Greg Murphy is going all the way in race 1.
Good Scaife.
Oh, good battle there for points. It's all about points at this round. The championship is on the line.
Brilliant drive, well done.
Absolutely. Greg Murphy does it again at Pukekohe.
Well done, boys. Good car, mate. Good car. Very, very good car. Mate.
And a good level-headed drive from Greg Murphy. When the doors opened up for him at turn 1, he slotted straight in there and watched the carnage go around him and held on to the race lead the whole way. 64 points in the bank for Greg Murphy. Todd Kelly finishes race 1 2nd. Garth Tander gets on the podium. Bargwanna finishes 4th, his best finish of the year. Radicic in 5th. Ambrose 6th. and Scaife 7th. So in terms of the championship, Murphy, who is second on the ladder, gets 64 points in the bank. Marcus gets 54 and Scaife gets 52. Greg Rust.
Well, Rob Crawford, he said it on the radio, the car was perfect. It wasn't perhaps a textbook start. I know he'd be a little hard on himself about that, but the rest was great.
Yeah, it was a bit of a disappointing start, but then pit stop wasn't too flash either, and we let Marcus out in front, and Greg actually drove, you know, his absolute arse off, so that's excellent.
That's a very technical turn there. Now, quickly, did you have to make much of a change to the car from the dry to the wet?
Yeah, we changed quite a few things on the car, and seemed to work pretty well, so it's good.
Sets up an awesome day tomorrow. Thanks, mate.
Yep, thanks. Cheers.
He's the quickest man in qualifying, and after the schmozzle of a shootout that we had, he ended up on pole position. Got himself in a little bit of trouble at the start, but as I mentioned, when the doors opened, he was there. Greg Murphy leads a Holden 1-2-3 in race 1 at Pukekohe. Garth Tander gets on the podium. Bargwana, great drive from him. He's in 4th position. Radicic, another, as Neil said, Quiet Achiever Award in 5th. Good points haul for Marcus Ambrose, but the contenders for the championship refuse to let go today. Greg Murphy with 64 points. That is vital in the championship, and that will effectively ensure for now that we're definitely going to take this championship down to the final round. Up he goes, Greg Murphy, hands in the air.